Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to our family and community webinar. We're just going to take about 20-30 seconds to make sure that everybody gets in here that is planning on attending, and then we'll get into some housekeeping and then we'll discuss family roles and addiction. Okay, so our topic for today are family roles and addiction. Brandy Ellis is going to be sharing with you guys today. She is our clinical supervisor from one of our inpatient locations. Just a few housekeeping items. We do have the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. So as Brandy is progressing through the slides, if you have any questions, feel free to throw those in at any time. We usually try to keep up with the questions as they come in, but if we're really on a roll, we'll make sure to kind of circle back to the questions at the end of the presentation. Any suggestions that you may have for future topics, you're welcome to throw those into the Q&A box as well. We've been kind of facilitating our webinar for over 2 years at this point, so we always welcome some new topic suggestions. And then lastly, at the bottom of some of the slides, we have some information that includes our admissions and referral line, our archives, so any of our past webinars at some point are pulled over to our YouTube channel, so you can see any of our past ones there if you're interested, or if there's any additional topics that kind of strike your fancy. So with that, I will turn it over to Brandy.
All right. Thank you, Amber. Like Amber said, my name is Brandy. I am the clinical supervisor at Conewago-Slater in Beavertown, Pennsylvania, little tiny town in the middle of nowhere, but it works perfectly for us and our facility, and has been doing great things out here. So thank you for letting me present to you today. So for today's topic, I'd like to discuss family roles and addiction. As Amber said, if there's any questions or anything that you would like to know more about, please let us know. Any suggestions for future topics, please also let us know about those as well. And let's go ahead and move into it. So family roles and addiction. What is a family? How does addiction affect the family, and how do you overcome these family roles? These are going to be the topics of our discussion as we move through things. So my very first part of the conversation is, what is family? Family is generally defined as members of a group of people who are linked together by common interests and goals, which in healthy, balanced family systems serve to protect and promote the welfare and development of its members. So families can look very different. Not all families are the same. And I was very when I was looking for like a specific definition of family, one of the things that I continued to kind of search and look for was ensuring that it's not just people that you're related to, because families really are different shapes and sizes, especially in today's society. It's really important for us to make sure that we're identifying that families are not just the traditional families that we've always known them to be, that they really are members of a group and are defined differently by everybody. With that being said, that's what we look at families as, the support system, the people in people's lives. What is addiction then? Addiction can be defined as the engagement in behavior to achieve or suppress effects of a desire, a preoccupation with a behavior, temporary cessation and loss of control, which leads to a person to suffer negative consequences. So addiction is obviously something that's negative in the light of the family and kind of the structure of what happens. So I want to talk a little bit about how addiction can affect families then. It seems pretty obvious, but it causes stress within the family dynamic, lots of anxiety that can come through with this. Um, Lots of conflict with the members in the family. There's lots of chaos and fighting, just general dysfunction and disruption in that homeostasis that family is looking for. When you think about homeostasis, it's the understanding that there is a um, calmness. Um, how is it that these roles develop within a family? Um, Again, understanding that homeostasis is this calmness or this balance. So within the family, there's a consistent need or try to return to this balance or return to and gain some sort of consistency. Trying to control a person that's struggling with an addiction can cause them to be more defensive, can cause them to withdraw from the family, which then in turn causes other issues and concerns for the other members of the family. This is what causes them to take on different roles within the household then. The roles are actually created as a way to diffuse the tension within the household and to kind of keep things in that balanced state. So when we're looking at the roles of addiction, we're actually looking at um, obviously the very first role was the person who struggles with the substance abuse. So the or any sort of addiction at that matter. So the addict is the dependent person. So this person has the dependent behaviors. They're exhibiting behaviors on like lying, stealing, manipulating others. Um, we see a lot of denial from people struggling with substance abuse, as well as other addictions, gambling, sex, pornography. Addiction is something that is more than just substance abuse, and it's something that we really do consider when we are looking at the whole person and working and treating the whole person. Um, so we see a lot of denial with folks that they may not even be realizing that there's a problem or that it's even affecting the family. A lot of the times with people who are struggling with addiction, they see it as this is a me problem. I'm the only one that's really being affected. At the end of the day, it doesn't have anything else to do with anybody else around us. But as an agency, we've really come to understand and acknowledge the fact that addiction really does affect the family as a whole. So a lot of the times with people that struggle with addiction, we see them blaming others. So the addict tends to blame others for the problems. They tend to take advantage of their family members, which then in turn causes chaos in the behaviors within the addict and what they're dealing with, and can lead to negative emotions. The addict's behavior tends to lead to negative emotion. We see a lot of mental health issues. Not only does it affect mental health, but it also affects mental health, physical health as well. So there's a lot of things that take a role in the addict itself. So again, coming back to that understanding and notion that a lot of the times people feel like it's not about anyone else around them, and the addiction really is for them and themselves to bear. But that's really not the case because for most people, they are part of a family or we know as family, and so they're functioning within that, causing other people to then take on other roles. So some of those other roles that we see within the family dynamic are the caretaker or the enabler. This role is really the role that allows for all the other roles to kind of come about and to um, flourish. So this person then be that we obviously we understand and know that the addict is the center and the person that like everything revolves around, but this role within this role it makes maintaining the other roles possible because this person is really doing their best to maintain the happiness amongst all the members. They're trying to balance everybody else out. Their role is to preserve the family's external image. They want to make sure that people from the outside don't see that there's any issues or things happening within the family. They're trying to keep everyone happy. They're avoiding conversations regarding addiction and the recovery process. They'll make excuses for the behaviors and actions of folks. And they often present to public that there's nothing going on and that the house and the home is great, everything's fine. Um, the things that the caretaker feels, the underlying piece of emotions that they're working through, tend to be inadequacy. They have just general overwhelming fear and helplessness. It's important to understand and know the underlying feelings and effects for the individuals involved. So then the next role that we're going to look at is the hero. Within the hero, this is where we tend to see people seeing the glass half full. They can be very helpful in the recovery process. But if they're not moving through the recovery process with the person, this person tends to be the one that it makes the family look good, or they'll ignore the problem and present things that they're great. Things look really great. Um, there's real positive. This person's often known in the family as the perfectionist. Their underlying feelings here are fear, guilt, shame, things that they're kind of feeling as they're moving through the addiction process with their loved one. Our next person and role that we're going to look at is the scapegoat. The scapegoat, this role is generally a person who is known to act out in front of others. They tend to be the rebel of the family and oftentimes actually finds themselves in addiction as well um, because of the way that they end up living their lifestyle and like to take that attention and divert it their ways. It tends to often lead them into an addiction as well. This person tends to feel a lot of guilt, shame, and just an overwhelming feeling of emptiness. So that's something that they need to make sure that they're being mindful of. Our next role then is known as the mascot. Our mascot is the person who is generally like the court jester. If you need a laugh, this is going to be the person that we go to. They're our class clown. They tend to make inappropriate jokes about the key players within the family that don't hit always when they should. They bring the humor to the unit, but oftentimes this humor can be really hurtful or harmful to the recovery process. But it's oftentimes the way that they deal and cope with their feelings. The internal and underlying feelings and emotions that these folks tend to feel are embarrassment, shame, and anger. Um, and in this role, the this person really is there as the person that's like, all right, I'm going to make this lighthearted. Everything's okay. As long as we're all laughing, everything's fine. So then we'll move through to the lost child. This child or this person within the family roles tends to be the silent one. So when you think about a person within the family unit that they don't really make a lot of noise, they don't get into a lot of trouble. They're the person that when we think about the family, oh, they're just so shy. They often give up their own needs to avoid conversations and controversy within the family and within the unit. This particular person tends to struggle with loneliness, guilt, neglect, and anger. So when we think about the roles within the family, I said that it's important to make sure that we're understanding the underlying things that the person is going to go through. And the reason it's important to address and identify those areas is because recovery is a family event. It's not just the person who's addicted that needs to go through the process of recovery. You're going to be going through this process with your loved one as well. So it's important for you as a person within that family unit to understand, what role do I play? What are some of the things I'm struggling with? What are some of the things I'm going to have to do to move forward? So, being able to identify what those emotions are, what those pieces are within yourself, and the underlying parts that you've contributed within the relationship is important for you and your moving forward and your progression. The next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about codependency. Well, the next slide, I'm going to talk about codependency. And the reason that I bring up codependency in family roles is because codependency often is taken on by the caretaker role, but it can often be something that is developed and occurs within all of the family members and the roles within the family. It's a learned behavior that involves the healthy reliance on or resolves the unhealthy reliance on others, and difficulty making and setting boundaries within your relationships with people. So, within codependent behaviors, we oftentimes see if or find ourselves having a hard time identifying and communicating thoughts and feelings of your own. We see a lot of folks with low self-esteem, feelings of hurt when other people don't recognize your efforts. This is a big one that we see with a lot of folks, is that, well, I'm trying, but no one's seeing that I'm trying. We see a lot of people pleasing here. People tend to ignore their own needs. This is one that we see with the lost child quite frequently. They will put their needs aside and allow for the needs of the other family members to be put in front of theirs. They tend to be self-sacrificing. They give and give and give and take nothing from all the others that are around them. So they then find themselves oftentimes in a depression, anxiety, having feelings of fear and loss within their relationships. Um, they struggle with making big life decisions. They don't want to have to make decisions on their own. They have poor communication skills because a lot of the times they've allowed themselves to set boundaries, and then the boundaries are not clearly communicated or not kept. So oftentimes we see the codependency build within that. They end up having obsessions with rescuing or saving the person that's struggling with addiction. And unfortunately, one of the things that we've learned about addiction is that people will not make change in their lives unless they are ready to do so themselves. So, rescuing a person is not in the cards. People have to be ready to rescue themselves. Oftentimes, we find people being dishonest or lying in the codependent roles because of that fact that they're trying so hard to make the family look perfect, or the outside look perfect and run so smoothly. So these are some things that it's really important to make sure that you're being cautious of or identifying, um, and understanding that this is not healthy for you or the other person that you're trying to help. It doesn't help them to grow within their recovery process, and it doesn't keep you safe either. Even though it feels like it doesn't keep you in a safe disposition. The next thing I want to look at is, what is a healthy family? Because we talk a lot about in recovery, the dysfunction and the things that happen that make it dysfunctional, but what's healthy look like? What does a healthy family system look like to people? There's open communication. It's so important for families to be able to communicate with one another. Within the family system, if there's not communication without fear of judgment, it's going to be difficult for the family to move forward with their recovery process. Um, Positive reinforcement. You're regularly expressing to one another the appreciation that you have, and you're encouraging one another to move forward in life. The family system should really have shared values and goals. If they're not common in beliefs, then it's going to be difficult for the family unit to move forward. Conflict resolution, there needs to be a discussion on how we're going to resolve issues and things that come up within our lives. So, whatever that looks like for your family, some people cannot manage conflict resolution on their own in the beginning. So, they need to bring in a therapist or somebody else that can help them navigate those conversations with one another. And those are all really important to the healing process. So, you can't have communication and conflict resolution if you can't compromise or you can't come to an understanding of each other's perspectives. So sometimes having a mediator or somebody coming in to help with that conversation is important. Emotional support, being there for each other. A lot of the times, that's what it feels like in the addiction a cycle, is that, well, I'm always there for this person and why can't they see that? But it's not just about offering support during the difficult times, but offering support during the times where things don't seem so tough or it's not as hard at those moments. So making sure that you're offering those emotional supports then too. Individual growth, encouraging each member to pursue their own interests is super important to the growth of the family. There needs to be an understanding that everybody in the family is different. I mean, there's several different roles that we just looked at because each person in the family is different. There are going to be times too within those roles that you might find yourself kind of ebbing and flowing through each one of them differently. Other things to think about are quality time. Are you spending quality time with your family or just quantity time? Quality and quantity are very different. You can be in the same room with somebody and not spend any time with them. The biggest one here is respecting each other's boundaries. If a boundary is put in place, ensuring that you're actually listening to the needs of the person that's setting those boundaries is going to be very important as you move through things in the recovery process with the person that's struggling with their addiction. So we've talked about what a healthy family should look like. We've looked at what codependency is and ways to be mindful of it. And then also, there's a good understanding of the roles that can form within a family and how those things come about. And understanding that recovery is possible for everybody in the family. So I want to look at, how do you overcome and move forward? This is the big piece of the conversation because we can talk all day about what that stuff looks like, but if we don't take the time to actually like look at the how do I move forward then? So this is that piece of things where I said it's important to understand and know those underlying issues and concerns that each person in the family is going to be struggling with or dealing with. It's important in that aspect of things to be able to identify what those emotions are and what those underlying problems and concerns are for each person within the family. Because you can't address the addiction as a whole unless you address the problems individually as well. So identifying that there is family problems, understanding and identifying, acknowledging the parts that you play within the family system. This can be the hardest part about moving forward, is identifying, what did I do? What were my roles? You obviously aren't the person that's struggling with the addiction, but what part did I play in this? How is it that I've managed to allow myself to get to this stage of struggle with my emotions? Um, so being able to see the role that you play, it can be very helpful to understanding the discomfort that's in the family. It's uncomfortable, but it's really important to make sure that you identify those roles so that you can move forward and heal from them. Um, so what are you doing to cope? What are some of those behaviors that you've done for yourself? What are the healthy behaviors that you've started to establish? Sometimes it's starting off with just identifying boundaries. What are simple boundaries you're ready to establish with the person that your loved one that you're working with in their addiction? What are those healthy boundaries? Is it that you are not comfortable or okay with them coming to your home without a certain something? Who knows? It can be anything. And maybe it's not even being able to have a conversation with them at first without somebody else in the room. Maybe that's where your boundary is, and that's where you need to start. And that's okay too. um, how are you coping with the stress of the relationship and what's happening within your life? That's a big one too. Ensuring that you're healthy is the only way that you're going to be able to help other people. The 12th step talks about giving it away to keep it. And that's important too as a family member as well. Um, for you to be able to cope and move forward is part of sharing the things that you're doing too. So, you know, is it maybe you're going to meetings yourself? That's something that I don't know that a lot of people are aware of. There are meetings for family members. Al Anon is a real thing, and it's something that a lot of folks should take more advantage of that don't. In our area, there's another program called the Balm program that's recently kind of come about. And it's a Christian based program, but it is also a program that has been created for by other families in recovery that have kind of understood that, hey, we've got to kind of look at this in a different way. Um, and then how involved are you in the recovery process with your loved one? One of the things that we encourage here at Fire Tree is the importance of family sessions and making sure that if that's something that you have the capability of doing, that you're getting involved with your loved one. The more family support that you have, the better off you guys are able to move forward. And again, understanding that addiction is a family disease. It's something that you need to cope with as a unit. It's not just for the person that struggled. They've said for many, many years that, oh, this only affects me, when in reality, it has affected the entire family in one way, shape, or form. So having that backing of the family is really important to the recovery process. And this then goes back to that understanding of what role did I play within the setting and in the process of recovery or in the process of addiction. Is there something there that maybe I contributed to here? And how do I then kind of untangle that mess? And a lot of that is learning to cope and deal with some of the underlying struggles that you have. Um, I feel like I went really fast through a lot of that, but we're getting to a place where questions would be good. And I don't know, I didn't see anything pop up.
No questions
But
yet, Brandy.
okay.
But as we give a couple minutes here for the questions, and Brandy mentioned balm. So we have a couple past webinars that tie really closely to this topic. So I'm just going to throw those out there too, because I think this is such an important and I think this is an area too where we really can increase our understanding about how important it is to have the family involved.
Yeah.
So one of our counselors at our halfway house location in Indiana presented on Balm, Be a Loving Mirror, a Family Approach. That was our August 2024 webinar. We talk about family engagement and treatment for our June 2024 webinar. Um, and there was one more. The family's role in recovery was June 2023. So those are all really closely related to Brandy's topic today, and kind of touches on the information, but does a deep dive in a little different direction. This is such a huge area to explore.
It really is.
But thank you, Brandy, for presenting. We really appreciate it. And for everybody that's here, we hope that we see you for our February webinar. That's going to be presented by Jean, who is one of our facility directors, and she's going to talk about genograms, what they are, why they're helpful, and how we can use them in treatment. So we'll have our registration link out to you guys soon. But all right, I don't think there's any questions. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brandy, for presenting.
Thank
Uh,
you.
we hope to see you guys next time.